Today on the Topping Show, Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch critiques the January 6 sentences. Vivek on Alvin Bragg case against Trump goes viral. A juror who joined a Biden victory parade is not disqualified for being on a jury against Trump. Libs a TikTok on 7.2 million illegal crossings under the Biden administration. Tesla execs stepping down due to the hard times. Oberweis dairy is also closing stores and seeking a buyer. And UnitedHealth care hack costs exceed $1.2 billion. All of that and much more on The Topping Show. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of The Topping Show is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, you see, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or a business owner, you can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you could click that button and tell your friends, I would greatly appreciate it. Now going over to the business part of the podcast, you have Tesla executives starting to step down. Now this comes as we continue to see the EV movement not crawling to a halt, but decelerating significantly. Almost as effective as of regenerative brakes that they use. Automotive pun, obviously. Intended? Attempted? I went for it. Now, this is not too surprising. Again, you got the down economy, high interest rates for automobiles across the board are struggling because, again, are you going to pay 7 to 9 to 10 to 12, 13% interest rate on a vehicle, especially on a luxury vehicle that no one on the planet needs? Now, truth be told, for me, it's hard to be a good old Honda Civic with 3 pedals, also known as a manual transmission. The best, most effective way to have fun, in my opinion. Granted, if you've never had that experience, try a manual transmission. You'll smile ear to ear. But there are some who perhaps are dead inside, but they prefer an EV vehicle in order to get to work or drive around, which is basically a computer on wheels, which are more expensive. You can't really repair them. You're locked in like a cell phone. But nevertheless, there's a market for that, and some people do appreciate it. However, it is also a big luxury. Now, specifically, it looks like Senior Vice President Drew Balgino, one of only 4 named executives of the automaker, and Rohan Patel, the Vice President of Public Policy and Business Development, have announced their partners, adding to the urgency notion that Tesla needs a quote-unquote succession plan. This is according to Melissa Cantor over at LinkedIn News. They also know that the company's valuation has dropped by about $500 billion earlier this week on Tuesday for the first time since April last year, making it this year's second worst performer on the S&P 500. Well, what is the age-old saying? The higher you are, the further you fall, or the harder you fall, something to that effect. But yeah, it's one of those other issues where their stock has been pulled up for quite some time and it's been really high up there. So it'll be interesting to see if people think, do they need new leadership at Tesla? I mean, do you think they're going to crash and burn? I mean, granted, they've built out their whole company so they're actually making profitable EVs, which is a challenge and a huge achievement in and of itself, as more and more of these other rivals are still bleeding. I mean, Rivian is losing about $40,000 per vehicle when they're producing their electric vehicles, and truth be told, most of the competition is. So, I mean, Tesla, in my opinion, has already achieved the unachievable in terms of building a business that's a profitable EV company. Granted, it took many years and subsidies to get there, but they are there. So let me know, do you think you'll look outside of the company in terms of maybe they'll promote from within or find some external candidates to replace these positions? And then at the end of the day, how much of Tesla, a value of the company is really with Elon? If he were to stop being CEO, do you think their stock would just crash precipitously or dramatically? It's not an insignificant amount of value. I can't help but think maybe there'd be a 20% stock drop if Elon ever stepped down, 30, 40. I mean, he's the man, he's the vision. That being said, do you think he's also working on a succession plan? He has told the board of directors that he has someone in mind. I forgot if that was leaked in terms of the individual a couple of years back, but he technically has one. And truth be told, you could perhaps argue the same thing when it comes to Apple. Steve Jobs founded the company, changed the world. A lot of people thought they were going to crash and burn after Tim Cook took over. And they actually did better than ever. Tim Cook helped propel the company to reach a huge landmark, becoming not just I believe under his leadership, it hit the $2 trillion mark in terms of public valuation, and even the $3 trillion mark, becoming at the time, the most profitable company on the planet. more profitable than oil, data, and pharmaceuticals. So there's a kind of a good use case of there's a very unique company, changed the world, and they had someone take over as CEO, and they actually did flourish. Will that happen in the case of Tesla? I'm not so confident in that, but let me know in the comments. As always, I'd be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Other interesting business news, you have Oberweis Dairy planning to close the plant and lay off 127 workers, which is quite unfortunate. If you're someone from the Midwest, you probably fondly remember Oberweis Dairy for their signature funny-looking milk bottles, where they actually did use glass to this day, which is actually more expensive. Well, it is more expensive, and some people might argue worse for the environment, since being heavier costs more to transport, but then you recycle it. So, likewise, man once said, there's no such thing as solutions, only trade-offs. And back when I was a kid, I would enjoy an ice cream every once in a while. I mean, Oberweis Dairy was that premium product that everyone loved, and they had these really cool little, even have pop-up stores. Well, not pop-up stores, but they actually got into the brick and mortar more and more. You started to see these around the Midwest, especially. And it's not too surprising considering they are headquartered or based in Illinois, or as people not from the state or never been to the Midwest call it improperly, Illinois. Though there is a lot of white noise over there. But nevertheless, they recently filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and they know that specifically they're laying off 127 workers at its North Aurora plant in Illinois. And again, they said they're noted for their milk packaged in glass bottles. It looks like the job cuts will start June 11th. So there's a little bit of time, and hopefully they're able to find gainful employment at one of the competitors or somewhere else down the road. And in terms of liabilities and looking for a buyer, it looks like the company said it had owed more than $4 million in unsecured claims of its top 20 creditors, with the largest debt of more than $774,000 to Hudson-based transportation company. The company, also known as Oberweis, deploys about 1,100 people, including part-time and full-time workers, especially in the summer, where it peaks at about 1,500 workers. In the court filing Monday, Oberweis Dairy President Adam Carber said that the company will continue to operate while seeking a buyer, and the court would create the best value for creditors and preserve more than 1,000 jobs, according to him. So hopefully they're able to keep the company, I was going to say, on top of the cream, or some type of funny dairy metaphor. But if you're from, actually I'd be fascinated, if you're from the Midwest, do you remember this company? Are you a fond customer of them? Is this something you can't live without? I mean, there's definitely a market for that. I mean, a lot of Americans love the ice cream, milk coming in glass bottles, certainly novelty. Some might argue actually tastes a little bit better. But it is kind of sad to see what, for me, was a big icon of the Midwest, kind of stumbling, and hopefully they're able to successfully come out of bankruptcy with a new owner. But this isn't too surprising, because we've seen similar companies, unfortunately headquartered in the great country, or some might argue the state of Texas. You'd have, Daisy Brands, which is, they own a lot, go down the aisle, see the yogurt, other dairy products. That's another big company. They're struggling very, very bad. And you also had, the Dairy Farmers of America? There's a couple other ones that did go bankrupt when the pandemic hit, or the pandemic, some might call it, just because you also have shifts in consumer demand. A lot of people are moving away from the traditional dairy, and even while there is an increase in people going to the gym using whey protein, which is a milk dairy byproduct, it doesn't seem to be making up for the overall decrease in demand. So let me know, actually, are you an adult and do you drink milk? And would you ever be willing to pay more for what would be a premium bottle of Oberweis dairy milk, which does come in, again, in their signature glass bottle? As always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Now going over to the culture part of the podcast, you have Libs of TikTok on the illegal crossing statistics going viral, 7.2 million under the Biden administration, more than the population of a majority of states in the United States. Again, this comes to us thanks to Libs of TikTok. And before the big statistic, she noted that, quote, over 7.2 million illegals entered the U.S. since Biden took office. This is greater than the population of 36 states. Those states include Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Mexico, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Oregon, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, Vermont, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming, which is quite a few to say the least. And also a fun reminder of how many states start with the letter M. Never really think about it. There's quite a few. Now, this was originally posted thanks to Chris Podolfo over at Fox Business, or Fox News rather, which, interestingly enough, is still in business despite, declining popularity seemingly day in day. They're somehow still in business. Now, this went viral, to say at least, got 473,000 views and about 11,000 likes. And scrolling down some of the top comments, you have one from, let's see here, if I could, Paul Zazupa, scrolling down a little more. And Paul says, oh, sorry about that. Let's see. Paul Zazupa says, well, if I could zoom in, it would be a little better. Apologies for that. And he says, and let's see, and then those illegals will contribute to more and more. Oh, geez Louise, this is driving me crazy. Fortunately, I can't read that on the monitor in front of me, so I'm going to have to scroll down a little bit. Or, let's see here. Let me see, I can read that from here, sorry. And then when those illegals have babies later, they will continue to suck the country of resources and that they don't pay for. It's insidious to deport all of them, including the children, unquote. Despite I was about to say my speaking ineptitudes. That's usually the thing that trips me up on the show, but in this case, it's my visual ineptitudes, even though it's close to 20/20 vision, so maybe zoom in a little bit more on the monitor next time. And that did get 87 likes. You also have what looks to be a meme or meme from someone by the name of Kenzie Mary saying, quote, thanks Obama, and there's a picture of Obama doing the OK sign, and it says, keep in mind that Democrats voted to fine American citizens for not buying insurance, and then conspired to give it to illegal aliens for free, unquote. They got 229 likes. Quite a few, to say the least. You also have Desiree with a meme, or rather a picture of Musk with some text, and he says, quote, failure to require photo ID to vote is obviously making it impossible to prove voter fraud. That is why the far left refuses to require a photo ID to vote, unquote. And 181 likes, which I really do want to hear if there's a legitimate argument to say as to why you should not have a photo ID to vote. The most disgustingly racist one you usually hear is, well, minorities can't get IDs. Spoiler alert, we can and we do. My family's from Cuba and we've never had an issue going to the DMV. It's a pretty straightforward process. Scrolling down, let's see here. Libercat Media TM says, quote, deport all of them. And someone looks like a gentleman in a suit, so at least there is a modicum of... Gotta appreciate that. As we all know, all wise men, the coolest of the cats, some might say, always suit up, of course. And there's a picture of a gentleman kicking someone out, and it says, the only hope to save America is mass deportation and close the border, unquote, getting 181 likes, which, I mean, we've had this debate for decades. I honestly don't see it getting any better or changing. The pessimist in me can't help but notice when it comes to Republicans and Democrats, we've been arguing about the same things for, again, decades. Gun control, abortion, immigration. And the pessimist to me kind of thinks they keep those topics and they keep those types of things in the cultural lexicon and as a controversy, because then both sides can raise money for campaign funds on those topics. So that's why I don't think we'll ever have a definitive, like a final ruling or a result either way. But let me know if you think differently. Let's see here. You have, what is this? Molly. Let's see. You have Molly Fisher saying, quote, we know why, and it's a picture of Biden with a fist, and it says, if you won't vote Democrat, I'll flood the country with people who will. That did get 140 likes. You have Red Wave Press chiming in. Oh, let's see here. And it's really... let's see here. And he says, 7.2 million illegal immigrants are the ones that are crossing the borders that we know about. There could be even more, getting 185 likes. So it went viral to say the least. Let's see. Emmy Shah Parody says, quote, raise your hand if you agree, close the border and deport every illegal alien, getting 14 likes. So there's, quite not as many contrarian statements. I thought it's usually one or two. But interestingly, not too many contrarian statements for this particular topic on the X Twitter today. But it will be interesting to see, will this become one of the biggest political topics? I think if you look at the top 10 things people are kind of at the top of their forefront of their mind when they're casting their votes, I think inflation and immigration are going to be two of the hottest topics this election year. Now, it'll be interesting to see at the end of the day, most of these states, again, they don't require voter ID in many cases. Maybe that's all it takes. Do you think that's not really a true concern? I mean, I think this is just going to become more and more viral on social media, and I think it might snowball into becoming perhaps even the number one issue when it comes to 2024 election, and as well as cultural conversations around the water cooler. Though, now that I think about it, most people work from home, so I don't know how apt the water cooler metaphor really is. Perhaps more apt metaphor would be the team's chat or the Slack channel. But nevertheless, I partially digress. Now going over to the political part of the podcast, you have Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch critiquing the Department of Justice on January 6 sentences. Now this was first brought to us thanks to End Wokeness on X Twitter, and it went viral to say the least, as youth might say. It got 2.2 million views and about, 38,000 likes, which is a good reminder to take the 1/1000th of a second to like this show or channel or subscribe. Either or all. Now, pulling up this really quick here. The technology likes me today. It does, kind of. Now, End Wokeness, before the video, says, quote, Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch nukes Biden's DOJ over the January 6th sentences. Gorsuch lists multiple cases of folks who, quote, obstructed a congressional proceeding, quote, without receiving a 20-year sentence. 1, sit-in trial, Kavanaugh protest. 2, pulling alarm, Representative Bowman. 3, hecklers in the crowd, Palestine. 4, mostly peaceful protests, BLM. Which, I'm actually fascinated to hear someone in the government actually admit, yeah, there might be a discrepancy in sentences between folks. And without further ado, let's see it here.
If I might.
And thankfully his voice is infinitely better than mine, so we'll go ahead and play that really quick.
So what does that mean for the breadth of this statute? Would a sit-in that disrupts a trial or access to a federal courthouse qualify? Would a heckler in today's audience qualify, or at the State of the Union address? Would pulling a fire alarm before a vote qualify for 20 years in federal prison?
There are multiple elements of the statute that I think might not be satisfied by those hypotheticals, and it relates to the point I was going to make to the Chief Justice about the breadth of this statute. The kind of built-in limitations are the things that I think would potentially suggest that many of those things wouldn't be something the government could charge or prove as 1512c2 beyond a reasonable doubt, would include the fact that the actus reus does require obstruction, which we understand to be a meaningful interference. So that means that if you have some minor disruption or delay or some minimal outburst, we don't think it falls within the actus reus to begin with.
My outbursts require the court to reconvene after the proceeding has been brought back into line, or the pulling of the fire alarm, the vote has to be rescheduled, or the protest outside of a courthouse makes it inaccessible for a period of time. Are those all federal felonies subject to 20 years in prison?
So with some of them, it would be necessary to show nexus. So with respect to the protest outside the courthouse, we'd have to show that, yes, they were aiming at the proceeding.
Yeah, they were trying to stop the proceeding.
Yes, and then we'd also have to be able to prove that they acted corruptly, and this sets a stringent mens rea. It's not even just the mere intent to obstruct. We have to show that also, but we have to show that they had corrupt intent in acting in that way.
We went around that tree yesterday.
I know. I heard the argument yesterday, but I guess what I would say is that to the extent that your hypotheticals are pressing on the idea of a peaceful protest, even one that's quite disruptive, it's not clear to me that the government would be able to show that each of those protesters had corrupt intent.
So mostly peaceful protest that actually obstructs and impedes an official proceeding for an indefinite period would not be covered?
Not necessarily. We would just have to have the evidence of intent, and that's a high bar.
They intend to do it all right, if I might.
Straight from the horse's mouth, or donkey, depending on what your thoughts are there. But it'll be interesting to see what's the long-term ramifications to this. Is there a ripple effect where more and more people kind of learn about this? So I know a lot of people who still think it's a conspiracy theory that people are, grandma praying on January 6th got sent to jail, or people are getting sent to jail in sentences for posting memes, or some people call them memes. That is absolutely 110% happening and has happened. And one of the first comments comes from Paul Zuppa saying, quote, Biden's DOJ didn't just over-prosecute, they wrongfully prosecuted. It's a two-tier justice system we've been seeing to the extreme over the last 3 years. Leftists might get arrested, but they are rarely charged. whereas peaceful Trump protesters get decades in jail. Unquote, getting 5.5 thousand likes, which is quite a few to say the least. You also have Anant Sean Parody saying, quote, no one has done more to harm America than Democrats, getting 1.3, or apologies, looks like 1.3 thousand likes. You also have Mark saying, quote, two-tier justice system says, funny how it works. Is a picture, what is it, is that Gore? Way back in the day. Gore saying, praise for questioning election. You have Hillary Clinton saying, praise for questioning election, which I should say, for the record, she absolutely looks stunning, brilliant, and brave. I would never, ever end my life prematurely. She's absolutely not corrupt, evil, or as disgusting as she is on the inside as she is on the outside. I would never say that or insinuate that in any way. For the record, I hope to live a long, prosperous life. Now, you also have another gal saying praise for election, questioning election. She was, I forget her name. She's a big deal, pun moderately intended. She was running for election in Georgia, and it's been years since she lost, and she still contends every single day that she actually won. And yet, she was praised for the questioning election. And they have a picture of Trump, and it says, indicted for questioning election. And that little meme got 6.2 thousand likes. You also have someone by the name of They're All Corrupt saying, quote, it's clear to anyone with a working brain and an ounce of common sense that the coup d'etat was the November election, and the cover-up of that election theft and fraud was January 6th insurrection created by Nancy Pelosi and Democrats. And there's a picture of just a kind of like a motivational board, just black backdrop with some white text, and it says, treason, you don't steal an election, give money and weapons to the Taliban, destroy your military, destroy your food supply, destroy energy and gas, disassemble your border, and encourage an invasion of your own country, and is not be considered treasonous act against your own country and people. Getting 2.2 thousand likes. Jan is quite a few to say the least. Let's see here. Scrolling down more and more. You have George Testa saying, quote, now arrest every one of these scumbag GOP traitors and Dems. And it's a picture compilation of, pretty much all the GOP rhinos, pejoratively known as Republicans in name only, as well as Democrats, and says the people who hid the January 6th footage are the same people who told you the election was fair. Unquote, getting 355 likes, which we only saw the footage thanks to Tucker Carlson releasing it. I forget was it Jim Jordan? There's someone in the government who actually did get the footage of him, and that's how we saw, not all, but many people who went into the Capitol were calmly walking around, and they almost looked like they were lost on a museum tour. And the police were opening doors and guiding some of them. And we didn't see that until, a year later? And yet, they had access to the tapes the whole time. Scrolling down more and more. Unfiltered says, quote, fight like it's 1776 or live like it's 1984. Getting 143 likes. And the bonus to just reference the most important, one of the most important, fascinating books, I would say, of all time. 1984 by George Orwell is a masterpiece. Spoiler alert, it is quite depressing, and even more depressing when you consider some of the book is actually, modern society is actually worse than the book in some ways. And spoiler alert, it's not a happy book, but it is accurate. A shorter, more child-friendly version would probably be Animal Farm by George Orwell. Again, another brilliant masterpiece that shows the dystopian that is communism and fascism, and unfortunately in many cases, the future of some areas. Got a couple more memes here. A couple of videos of Biden just walking around aimlessly. Let's see here. Someone wearing a backwards hat and a t-shirt, which, again, as we all know, men always look best when they suit up, but he does have a meme, and it says, if you still hate Trump after this Biden shit show, your commitment to stupidity is impressive, getting 381 likes, which is quite a few to say the least. So it'll be interesting to see how much does this really resonate with prospective voters. There are a lot of people who are really irate about January 6th, and they feel the censuses were in no way fair or comparison to other similar situations. And there are a lot of people, campaigning, reaching out to Trump saying, first thing you should do day one is, pardon all of them. I don't think it's the number one topic people are discussing at water cooler when it comes to political initiatives and ideals and topics that are really resonating for 2024 election. For sure, top 20. But I wonder how many of these Because again, politics is a game of chess, and convincing people in the middle to get on your side and getting the vote out and reach out to people, make sure they actually get out there and vote. How many people in the middle, or how many people who have never looked into January 6th, except for the one or two, the CNN headlines, how many of them still think how many of them have looked into actually find the facts, and how many of them realize the ripple effect that it could have? As always, let me know. I'd be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Other interesting political news, you have Vivek on Alvin Bragg case against Trump going viral, to say the least. Now, this comes to us thanks to Vivek Ramaswamy's personal X-Twitter profile, in which he says, and thankfully his voice is infinitely better than mine, so we'll let him speak here in a second or two. But before this video, he actually says, quote, Alvin Bragg's case against Trump rests on the ludicrous legal premise that the candidate must use campaign funds to make personal hush money payments. Yet if Trump had done that, they'd undoubtedly be going after him for that. This isn't the part of the pursuit of justice, it's a political persecution that's tearing our country apart, unquote. Now granted, also a plus for marketing, Vivek, as every man should, did suit up, and he also went above and beyond getting the good old American pin on his lapel. And granted, his voice is infinitely better than mine, so without further ado, if the tech would work for me. Let's see here.
Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg's prosecution of Donald Trump and its trial begins today. What a joke. I'm against these prosecutions on principle. I think they're destructive to our country. But let's just examine the facts and the law here. Alvin Bragg effectively is prosecuting Donald Trump for making hush money payments, allegedly, to Stormy Daniels, and then paying Michael Cohen in a means that Alvin Bragg thinks is falsifying business records. Well, first of all, falsifying business records in New York is a misdemeanor, not a felony. And it falls outside of the statute of limitations, meaning it happened so far long ago that Alvin Bragg can't bring the case unless he charges it as a felony, which requires an underlying crime that he's advancing by falsifying those business records that was also a felony. Here's where the legal stretch really begins. That requires Alvin Bragg to say that Donald Trump's payments should have been made out of a campaign account. That's his theory of the case, instead of being made personally, or else it's a constructive campaign contribution. That's bunk. Think about it. Look, you've had smart people like former FEC Commissioner Bradley Smith, who has correctly pointed out that if Donald Trump did use campaign money, campaign contributions, to pay off hush money, that would arguably be an even stronger legal case to bring against him than the case they're bringing now. So in that version of the world, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. They're going to get him going or they're going to get him coming. It's almost as though they decided this is the person we're going to prosecute, and then we're going to figure out what we're going to charge him with after the fact. Well, guess what? That's exactly what happened. You have Alvin Bragg, a Manhattan DA who was elected.
I'm going to be sorely disappointed if he doesn't make that comparison to the USSR or the Soviet Union, which Justice Sullivan, I believe he is famously quoted saying, "Show me the man and I'll show you the crime," where they just, make it up.
On the promise of going after Donald Trump. For what crime? We had no idea. Just the idea that they had to go after Donald Trump. This is a politician keeping his campaign promise. That is a bastardization of our legal system. That's not how we do things in the United States. And that motivation accounts for why this case is so weak and emblematic of the other prosecutions that have since followed against Donald Trump. I think Trump is going to prevail, but most importantly, I hope we move beyond this phase of our history where you have one political party that thinks it can use the legal system to prosecute its opponents. The same shoe can fit the other foot, and if we keep going down this direction, we're not going to have...
He says that, and yet, I've heard this argument for almost a decade now, where people keep saying, well, the left shouldn't do that because eventually the right will get in power, then they'll do the same thing. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, a lot of those Republicans are useless rhinos, pejoratively known as Republican in name only, where once they do get the power, they do nothing. Which means they're just Democrats in disguise, or they just don't stand for anything. They just acquiesce and they basically do nothing. Which, not to go on my usual tangent into disappointed in politics, but a good example would be the Republicans had the House, they had the Senate, and they had the presidency. They had the White House. And they couldn't get suppressors off the NFA list, also known as the National Firearms Act, and treat it like a standard 4473, firearm transfer. So to this day, if you want to buy a suppressor and you're one of the 42 states that allow it, you have to be fingerprinted, you have to have an extra photo ID, you have to pay a $200 tax stamp to the U.S. Treasury Department, you You also have to pay sales tax on top of that, and then you have to wait sometimes days, months. The longest I've heard is 10 months to get the paperwork back. Now it's been changed, so there's now an electronic method of submitting it, and I know some people who are they're getting it back a lot quicker these days, but still. That's why, I mean, so many politicians say, well, you don't want to set this precedent. I mean, in theory, yeah, you shouldn't, because a rational opponent in a political battle or for the philosophical battle, they would most likely do the same thing.
Have a country left in the complete absence of a legal argument, even to bring this case against Trump isn't just embarrassing to Alvin Bragg, it's embarrassing to our country. I hope Donald Trump not only prevails in this trial, but that we prevail as a country to move beyond this phase of our national history. That's what it's going to take to reunite and rebuild this nation.
So I agree, that'd be great. Yet
Manhattan DA out.
I don't know why. Is it a bug or a feature? But a lot of times the video just automatically start replaying. Perhaps they're just insinuating that you really want to see it again, or maybe it's just a bug that Elon will fix. Or no, that's always the debate in IT. It's not a bug; it's a feature. But I partially digress. One of the first comments comes from Elon Musk himself, and he says, quote, "This case is obviously a corruption of the law, lawfare," unquote, getting 30,000 likes. And let's see if we do it, will it be 30,000 or 31,000? Is that, could we be it? Could we be the one? Oh, we weren't. I was wondering if we were the one more needed to get up to 31,000. We weren't, but nevertheless, we did like it. Now, Vivek also responded saying, quote, "Show me the man, I'll show you the crime," unquote. So he did get that reference eventually. And that got 4.1 thousand likes. You also have Paul Zazupa saying, quote, "This is pure election interference and everyone can see it. That's why all these cases have been backfiring immensely for Democrats. President Trump will emerge from this latest sham more popular and powerful than ever. This is just desperation by Democrats," unquote, getting 890 likes, which, yes, statistically speaking, pretty much every time Trump has got indicted, he has increased in popularity. We saw this when it comes to the Republican nominee. We had all these prospective, all these candidates coming out, they're all campaigning, and Trump got first hit. And I mean, a lot of people thought this would tank his career. He's done. His followers will abandon him. He's out of politics. The opposite happened. He became more popular. And every time he's been indicted, when we saw this, the statistics on the poll aggregator, was it 538.com or project.538, and as a poll aggregator would take the averages of all these different polls. Every time he was indicted, Trump would go up in the Republican nominee poll. And again, at the end of the day, he did win the Republican nominee. And again, I think a lot of these charges are just showing people in the middle, well, it doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem equal, with the most blaring case being the improper storage of documents and files, where again, we saw not just Trump, but you had Mike Pence, you had Trump, you had Obama, you had Biden, you had many politicians who did not properly store their documents, which also shows you perhaps the ineptitude of politicians, or we had too many classified documents, and yet the only person that was really charged was Trump. And then you have Hillary Clinton deleting her emails, using BleachBit, and smashing her phones when she had an on-prem email server, which again, no one has an on-prem email server. I work in IT. I know a couple guys who have one for like tinkering because they're really big into building out their own physical infrastructure. Your regular person does not have an on-prem email server, and yet when the Department of Justice was asked, "Are you going to go after her?" they said, "No, she's running for president. It'd be bad optics if we were to. This would be election interference," and that they are going after Trump. Interestingly enough, we do have some contrarian statements to make life a little bit more interesting. We have our favorite leftist, Luke Zaleski. Well, not really favorite, but I do appreciate counterpoints and different perspectives, because I like to get a little boring if you're in an echo chamber. So I like to follow a couple of people who are far left, far right, from the middle, giving as much perspective as possible. Now, Luke Zaleski, who his profile picture is of him wearing a V-neck, which almost comical. As we all know, a man should always suit up, and at every occasion he looks better. Now, I partially digress. Luke Zaleski says, quote, "MAGA glossary for dummies." I won't say F- for marketing, but he also used the number 4 instead of saying 4. Maybe he's trying to use the cliche of the old book for dummies, which is one of the most successful how-to books, but I partially digress. Luke Zaleski says, 1, education is indoctrination. 2, prosecution is persecution. 3, losing is winning. Ricky Bobby would have something to say about that. 4, insurrection is patriotism. 5, violence is victimhood. 6, killing women is pro-life? What? 7, anti-racism woke is racism. Well, by its very definition, those initiatives, like, they treat people differently based on their race. So, yes, that's... Oh, yeah, it says 8, anti-fascists are fascists. 9, law enforcement is illegal, unquote. Which is especially ironic when you consider, he says, law enforcement is illegal, and yet, I mean, there's a pretty big group of people saying back the blue. And he says, killing women is pro-life? I've yet to hear any politician or person promulgate they want to kill a woman. If anything, the pro-life people's whole concept is to save prospective lives and the women. He says, insurrection. So, great, I think it's mentally vacuous. However, 121 people did appreciate his comment, and they did like it. You also have 30 people respond to it. So again, there are some people who this will decrease their favor in Trump, and they're just going to see the headline that say Trump indicted. They'll see the headline. And again, a lot of people are working hard these days in terms of their time and resource allocation. They don't have time to research the topics. Truth be told, there are some interesting news articles. I'll go down the rabbit hole. Before I know it, I'll spend an hour looking up a new topic. So I understand not everyone has that time. But I can't but think maybe more and more people are going to look beyond that. And let me know. Maybe I'm just being a hopeless optimist, perhaps. Now, I also have the red-headed libertarian who, A+ for marketing. Not only is she red-headed, but she also is a libertarian, which I'm a little biased because I'm a little bit myself. Now, she says, quote, they just made it up as it go. It's incredible. I'm quoting 594 likes. Let's see, scrolling down. Interesting. Someone by the name of Robert Stupis has some type of AI-generated image of Biden holding an ice cream cone, and it says, quote, an evil man will burn his own nation to the ground to rule over the ashes, unquote. And apparently that was written as a quote by Sun Tzu, who's probably most famously known for writing the book The Art of War. Which, let me know if you want me to do book reviews. I usually read one book a month about business or philosophy of politics. Let me know if let me know in the comments if there's something interesting. I got a whole shelf of books, behind me, to my left, which would be stage right, move right. I was going to say, ADHD aside, it has a creepy looking AI-generated image of Biden holding an ice cream cone, which, something weird about, I don't know. To me, I thought ice cream was always more for kids. I don't know, I'm trying to think last time I bought ice cream where it wasn't on a date. When was NSYNC popular? Never mind, I partially digress. Scrolling down more and more. You have Emergent Perspectives saying, quote, they're willing to flush it all down. And is a donkey dressed up in a suit, which, at least the donkey's styling, he's suited up. And the donkey has the D logo for the Democrat Party. And he says, yes, I hate Trump this much. And is flushing down the Justice Lady, U.S. Justice System, and is flushing it down the toilet. That got 667 likes. You also have, what is this? Democrat Media TM saying, quote, this is a politically motivated persecution. And there's a picture saying, I stand for Trump, getting 749 likes. And a lot of my friends politically in the middle, and even a couple who are, not leftist, but they're more left-leaning, even though some of them aren't going to vote for Trump, they still acknowledge and they think this just on its face, doesn't seem fair. It sure seems like political persecution, especially when you have these deltas and differences between, the same charges being executed and actually, gone through it differently based on seemingly your political affiliation. Let's see, scrolling down more and more. Let's see here. This is MAGA. Someone by the name of MAGA Monk says, at the appropriate time, Alvin Bragg will need to be prosecuted for federal election interference. I'm cooking 265 likes, which, I don't know, I'm pretty pessimistic in terms of when you see people in the government actually held accountable. I don't want to say it's rarer than winning the lottery. But the odds are not zero, but it's like 0.000000175%, give or take. So will Alvin Bragg actually be held accountable or be prosecuted for politically prosecuting Trump or targeting Trump inappropriately? I don't think it's going to happen. You have Florida man ETH, which, truth be told, the emoji is in fact of a man with a orange for a head and a red hat. Which the only thing missing is the alligator emoji. There is a orange emoji in the name as well. And Florida man ETH says, quote, Vivek continues to be an outstanding man with a firm set of principles. When will people realize the only reason for this sham trials is because Democrats can't win without cheating? They are very scared of what Trump will accomplish this November, 100%. Unquote. That got 678 likes. So you're scrolling down more and more. Brandy, which, interestingly enough, looks like her name also has a wine glass. So close to good marketing. Yeah, I see where you're going there. And she says, quote, this is definitely election interference. And that got 54 likes. Let's see here. Do one more here. You have American 357 saying, quote, and there's a picture of We the People document, what's the historic document of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. He says, this wasn't written to keep you in line, it was written to keep them in line. It's juxtaposed to the picture of our government, which, yes, people keep forgetting, that got 193 likes. So it'll be interesting to see, again, Vivek keeps, as youth might say, going viral, bringing to the forefront a lot of these political topics. At the end of the day, I can't help but think he's going to have some type of position with Trump if Trump does successfully win. What that position might be, I mean, a lot of people are speculating he'd be a great VP. I think he'd be an exceptional vice president. I like the fact that Vivek actually articulates his plans instead of the cliche. You see every politician, left and right, they'll go to Capitol Hill and they'll go in front of the TV and they go, we need to get Americans back to work. And they never tell you, okay, here's policy A, B, and C that are going to accomplish that. And it's going to accomplish that because, we've seen this work before. And also it's in the purviews of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Vivek actually says, oh yeah, we can do this and this. And by the way, I actually stand for the Constitution, which in politics is seemingly, unfortunately, is a rare thing. So let me know, what do you think the future is for Vivek? Do you think at the end of the day, he's going to get a position with Trump at the White House? As always, it'd be fascinating to hear what you have to say. Other interesting political news, you have a juror who has actually joined a Biden victory parade is not being disqualified off of possibly testifying against Trump, or rather ruling against Trump as being a juror. Now, this comes to us thanks to End Wokeness on X Twitter. And End Wokeness said, quote, breaking, Judge Merchan rules that the juror who joined a Biden election victory parade is not disqualified off the jury against Trump. The reason? Because the juror claims she thought it was a celebration of essential workers, unquote. Really? Does anyone believe that? I can't help but think absolutely not. Perhaps that's why I went viral as these by saying getting 1.2 million views and 14,000 likes, including myself. Now, one of the first comments comes from Elon Musk, the OG, and he says, quote, this doesn't seem just. I mean, it got 18,000 likes, or maybe 19,000. No, I was going to say, I clicked the button, so I was not the additional vote needed to make it over that hump to the 19,000 mark. But nevertheless, 19,000 people did agree with Elon. And Wokeness also said, quote, and if Trump complains about it, he could face additional charges for violating the gag order, unquote, getting 4.5 thousand likes, which, yeah, I'm not a fan of gag orders on any side. You have also Paul Zupa saying, quote, Judge Merchan is proving with every action he takes that he's partisan and biased against President Trump. Merchan should have recused himself from the trial from the start, given his connections with the Biden regime. Instead, he's just shown himself to even be more corrupt, unquote, getting 832 likes. You have Sarah Smith saying, quote, image of the jurors leaked. And it's a cliche, allegedly an adult female, although mentally probably the same intellect as a child, famously who broke down and cried when Trump won an election. Which, again, if you're crying because someone won an election, I can understand being upset and you're like, oh, gosh darn it, or God damn it. You might take the Lord's name in vain, or, you drop the F-bomb or something. But if you're crying, I mean, that's just a sure sign of mental weakness, in my opinion. And that did get 719 likes. Scrolling down more and more. You have Laughs at Liberty saying, quote, how's this not ethics violation? And I mean, seriously, this is a effing kangaroo court. And it's looks like an article from Christine Wong, April 6, 2023, so a little bit old, but it says, Judge Juan Merchan donations to Democrats could be the grounds for ethics investigation. They got 502 likes, which, yeah, if you're a judge, I don't care if you're left or right, it doesn't look good to give political donations. I mean, and again, it's also a fascinating debate in and of itself. Is it possible for Trump to have an impartial group of jurors to actually judge him? I mean, he's very polarizing. People love him, they hate him. how many people have a neutral opinion of him or have the mental intellect to actually be emotionally intelligent enough not to take into account biases and treat just the facts as they stand? I can't but think, and this isn't good, but I can't but think there's an emotional deficit in the United States, or rather a deficit of emotional intelligence on the left and the right, just in general. So that's let me know in the comments, do you think it's possible for him to actually get a true, unbiased group of jurors to judge him? They'd certainly have to change it geographically speaking. Perhaps maybe having it in a traditional purple state or a state that has traditionally gone both left and right. That might help. But I can't but think maybe you'd have to look into the jurors' voting records. That is a challenge in and of itself. Now, you also have, what's this? Scrolling down more and more. You have Miss Densako saying the jurors, and it's a bunch of cliche. I mean, it's totally coincidence that a bunch of liberal white women crying in anger, and what is it? Let's hear what they have to say. This might make your earballs bleed, though. It's just general nonsense. They get 103 likes, though. Scrolling down more and more. Interestingly enough, I'm not seeing a lot of contrarian statements. Yeah, let's see. You have Dr. Steve Turley saying our justice system is such a mockery of the word justice, getting 101 likes. Let's see. You have Pismo saying, quote, it should be no surprise that President Trump will not get a fair trial in New York City, unquote, getting 142 likes. Which, again, it's fascinating to look at the old interviews and the old media coverage of Trump. I mean, before he was into politics, I mean, he was loved and revered by a majority of folks. And as soon as he declared he was going to be, go over to the Republican Party, that's when the media turned on him like it was the end of times. I also have Gunther Eagleman saying, quote, the epitome of corruption and cooking, 670 likes. So not a lot of contrarian statements here, or not a lot of contrarian comments. But let's see here. You have a couple of little, you have Anish Shah, which I can't parody account. I can't but think he does this for every single post when it comes to politics, but he again uses the same post saying, quote, no one has done more harm to America than Democrats. Now in this case, he only got 17 likes. I don't want to say it's lazy, but I mean, just copy pasting the same thing. Yeah, it doesn't take a lot of effort to do that. So let me know. Do you think? I mean, is it even possible to get an impartial trial at this point? I mean, you see this issue with a couple other legal instances as well, but I can't but think it's going to be hard to actually show that, oh yeah, this is an unbiased jury. I mean, they can give a fair trial just like the facts. I mean, let me know if you think that's possible, but I'm certainly not surprised that this person went to a Biden parade and they said, oh yeah, you go on the jury, totally not impartial. You're totally going to be impartial. I mean, let me know if you believe that. And let me know, do you think there's anywhere geographically or the better sample size or better jurors where Trump could get a true jury of his peers that are unbiased? As always, it'd be fascinating to hear what you have to say. Now going over to the business blunder of the day, you have UnitedHealth hack to exceed $1.2 billion, which is quite a pretty penny to say the least. Well, I should also clarify, a vintage pretty penny, since modern pennies are just 99.99% zinc, also known as trash, and they're simply copper plated, which perhaps is a sad metaphor for U.S. currency and the monetary system in general, where it used to be made out of precious metals like copper, silver, and what have you. Now, this is coming to us thanks to Rivia Gold over at LinkedIn News. And she says, quote, UnitedHealth Group said that its recent cyber attack will cost between $1.35 billion and $1.6 billion this year. The February attack compromised the ability of physicians and medical care providers to get insurance approval for services across the U.S. tied to Change Healthcare's billing and payment systems. Continues to say, quote, about 80% of physicians are reporting, quote, lost revenue from unpaid claims from the attack. According to a recent survey, UnitedHealthcare Group reported $1.4 billion quarterly loss, in part driven by the sale of its Brazilian business, but it saw a revenue rise of $99.8 billion, up from $91.9 billion last year. Which, granted, I'm biased. I own a cybersecurity entity, so obviously I think you should bolster your cybersecurity at all times. But for this cost to keep racking up more and more, and it's even hurting mom and pop shops. I have a couple local, independent operators when it comes to, dental and physical physicians, where, they're independent. They're not part of a big hospital organization, but they still use this infrastructure for some of their billing, and they're having instances where they're not getting paid. So this is horrifying if you're a small business owner in that industry. It's not just the big hospitals that utilize these types of technologies as this type of company. And this ripple effect is hurting the whole industry, which is another good reason to, just, in my opinion, for certain things like dental, there's no reason to get insurance. Just, pay cash and everyone's a little bit happier usually. But to not properly protect the company and have such a huge, we're talking $1 billion. I don't know if they just need to hire better offensive cybersecurity, teams to test their environment. They need to bolster the type of cybersecurity solutions they use. But again, having that hack cost over $1 billion, I gotta say, that is certainly the business blunder of the day. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in. Again, we're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you could click that button, I greatly appreciate it. Also, leave me a thumbs up, thumbs down, or comment. It's a great way to give me some additional feedback, letting me know how I can make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.